A man who is always great for at least 3 periods, maybe more. The Athletics Carolina Panthers beat writer, the one and only Joe Person at Joseph Person on Twitter. He joins us. It's Bryce Young Day. How about that? He gets to start again, Joe.
Yeah, how about that? Not probably in the way anyone imagined.
No.
From Bryce to Dave Canales to Bryce's agent. And, yeah, it's just sort of another candle in the cake of what has been a pretty crazy Panther season. Even finally, Dave Canales, the always upbeat Dave Canales, yesterday conceded. The question was, have you ever been through a season like this? And he finally said, you know what? No, I haven't. And I don't know that it's the weirdest. In fact, I'm certain it's not the weirdest, wackiest season of the Panthers I've ever covered, but it's starting to at least get in the conversation.
Joe Person is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. I've talked a lot about the way Dave handles it's really more post-game situations than anything else. It's almost like he's trying to protect the confidence and the psyches of these grown men professional football players when he shouldn't have to. Like, his fans don't want to hear about, we had a great week of practice after getting absolutely clowned by the Washington Commanders' second-string quarterback. And I just found the post-game coming out of that just absolutely, like, you completely missed the mark. Fans wanted to hear that you were mad, that you were frustrated, that you couldn't believe how bad it was, and we had a great week of practice. Do you think some of that is wearing on him too?
Yeah, I think fans are getting a little frustrated with that, and I think you and I have talked about this, Adam, but a lot of that is the Pete Carroll effect and the Pete Carroll influence, and obviously the difference being is Pete Carroll won a lot of football games
yes.
with the Seattle Seahawks. And so if Pete was Mr. Jolly and, you know, rainbows and unicorns, at least he could fall back on the Legion of Doom secondary and all those, you know, NFC West titles and what should have been 2 Super Bowl championships, Lombardi trophies in a row. Obviously, there's no stock built up yet for Dave Canales. And so, yeah, I think sometimes that does ring a little hollow. But I don't know. We have said the main day-to-day reporting group has said, what's he going to be like if this season continues down this path that it seemingly is headed toward? And I don't know. He's still... Again, even yesterday with that admission about this being a weird season, that was still pretty tame. Ron Rivera, as nice a human being as Ron Rivera is, he would sometimes just reach his limit and blow up in those I think fans want to see that. And by the way, I think a lot of them want to see it out of Bryce Young, too.
Yes. There is a similarity between their emotions, between how they present themselves, that you would think they would be more in sync as a tandem. Hasn't yet worked out. I am curious. You said that nobody expected this, and you mentioned Bryce's agent. Are we do I read anything into that? Like, has there been push for from the agent side for maybe an exit from Carolina?
No, I don't think it's gotten to that point yet. I was just sort of talking in general, but yeah, certainly it's something to keep an eye on, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Bryce Young has a career and a reputation of his own to keep in mind. And listen, I'm not saying that, I'm not excusing a season plus 2 of mostly bad football from Bryce Young. I mean, let's be clear.
Right.
And so I think that is going to hurt any potential trade, first and foremost.
Sure.
Who wants him? Would anyone want him as a starter? It's hard to imagine, short of like just an injury or two at someone's quarterback position. But we're at we're 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks now away from the trade deadline. I think that the Panthers are going to ask for a lot, and a lot of that's for optics because of what they gave up for Bryce Young. I don't think they can. I think it would be a really hard sell to the public and to sponsors and everyone else if they get, a conditional fifth-round pick for Bryce Young after giving up the farm. And so I do think they'll be active over the next 12 days. I think, Deontay Johnson makes a whole lot of sense to and I know people are like, well, he's the only good receiver we have. Well, yeah, so what? I mean, so that's even almost more reason to get what you can get and maximize. We are seeing a lot of receivers go off the board. I mean, we know what his market likely the asking price will be, somewhere in that conditional fourth range, I would think.
Right.
And I think he's their most valuable chip. I mean, they're not going to trade Chuba Hubbard. They probably will try to trade Miles Sanders. But anyway, and if they get killed again at Denver, I would. If I'm Dan Morgan, I'm making just about everyone but a handful of guys. I mean, I'd put a tag or a price tag and ask people to make me an offer on Jadeveon Clowney.
Yep.
Because why do you need an 30-year-old edge rusher on a potentially 2-15 team?
Joe Person from The Athletic. You read my mind with all of these things. I actually said a few weeks ago that I would make a list of every asset that I had, and I would put it like, come shopping. The doors are open. A Black Friday special. Make me an offer for anything. Like, I would include J.C. Horn in that, but I get very militant about these things. I would make everybody available. You and I have talked enough about. I would have been trading Brian Burns 2 years ago. You and I talked about that. Yep. The only player I wouldn't have traded going even into this year was Derek Brown, because when you can find a defensive lineman of his quality, that's the guy you keep. But now he's hurt, and the value wouldn't be worth trading anyway for somebody who's not going to play this year. But everybody else on my team, and I absolutely mean that, would be available in a trade. Joe Person from The Athletic is joining us here in the Adam Gold Show. Does it change at all, though, if Bryce Young plays relatively well against Denver? If Bryce has a good game, and for a lot of people are rolling their eyes going, what do you mean if he has a good game? He's not going to have a good game. Probably not. But if he does it change their approach at the deadline?
Yeah, there's a fascinating question, and really the whole storyline to me is pretty intriguing because, as you said, Denver defense, I mean, they're third in the league overall. They're fifth against the pass. Yep. Vance Joseph has done a terrific job. It's going to be tough sledding. Like, they will make you earn every yard, and that would not seem to portend well for Bryce Young. But if he plays well, to me, here's a more interesting scenario. Or not that your question wasn't interesting.
That's fine.
But I'm dovetailing. If Bryce plays okay, and the defense happens to – the Denver Broncos, the Broncos offense is not a juggernaut.
No.
Bo Nix has not done some nice things, mostly with his legs, keeping plays alive. But let's say Jadeveon Clowney's back this week, Josie Jewell's back, and the defense plays well, and the Panthers win with a middling performance by Bryce Young. Then what does Dave Canales do, assuming Andy Dalton is healthy next week? Like, that is fascinating. And if he goes, I think if they win, you got to keep Bryce in the lineup regardless of how he plays. But if Canales does not, if we need any more proof that Dave Canales is not on the Bryce Young bandwagon, that will be it. And get ready for the trade deadline talk. Even if it doesn't happen at the deadline, it's going to be happening in that scenario.
Yeah, there is nothing that Dave Canales can do short of declaring Bryce Young his starting quarterback for the rest of his tenure as head coach that will convince me that he wants Bryce Young to be the quarterback, because he refused to answer any of your questions. We kept playing the follow-ups. He refuses to answer any questions about Bryce Young. The opportunity after Andy was really no good in the first half in Washington, and it was 27-0, to not even consider Bryce starting the second half would have been a great opportunity to get him, 4 or 5 series as opposed to the one. I mean, we didn't even try to pick up a first down series at the end of the game. I thought that was appalling, but to me, it just cemented what I thought is that Dave Canales doesn't want Bryce Young to be his quarterback, and that Andy Dalton would be the quarterback if he could grip the football.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and I think all of us, in retrospect, and I'm raising my own hand,
right?
If we had the narrative of quarterback whisperer, and Dave Canales was hired to fix Bryce Young,
right?
I mean, that lasted 2 games.
Yeah.
That is nuts.
And he was worse this year than he was last year.
I know. And it was just, I don't know if it was self-preservation on the part of Dave Canales. And listen, even prior to Dave Canales, there were people in the building that really were hoping to hire Brian Callahan before he went to Tennessee, and the Titans didn't let him leave the building. Well, he could have left the building if he had a better feeling, presumably, about Bryce Young than he did Will Levis.
Levis.
So we're getting into a whole other conversation. But the point being is, Dave Canales, yes, he said the right things upon getting here. He had the track record turning around quarterbacks who had been struggling, but he was not part of those decisions. He wasn't part of the team that flew to every quarterback pro day, from C.J. Stroud to Levis to Bryce to Anthony Richardson. None of it. And so the closest tie he has to Bryce Young is through Dan Morgan, because Dan was here and he was the assistant GM under Fitterer. But I mean, short of a pretty just remarkable stretch of football from Bryce Young, which we haven't seen to this point, but we saw in college. Short of that, I can't imagine he's got a long future in Charlotte.
Joe Person. That's why you win awards. At Joseph Person on Twitter, from The Athletic, covers the Panthers. Thank you very much. Enjoy the 15 minutes or so that you get to watch practice today, and I'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good week.
You too. Joe Person here from The Athletic.